WNBA Finals. And so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. You know, I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments. And so all I'll say is just, you know, it's obviously...
They literally held a golden opportunity in their hands, a chance worth billions in exposure, ticket sales, and future revenue, and they just tossed it aside. Picture this: the world's most electrifying basketball star, someone who sells out arenas in minutes, inflates ticket prices on the secondary market by 500%, and shatters viewership records just by stepping on the court. And yet, USA Basketball looked at her and said, "No thanks, we don't need you." That's exactly what happened to Caitlin Clark this summer. This wasn't merely a roster decision, it was a cultural earthquake, revealing a deep and persistent divide between the old guard of women's basketball and the new generation actually driving the sport forward. For months, USA Basketball tried to sell the narrative. It's all about experience, seniority, and team chemistry. They wanted us to believe that the greatest scorer in NCAA history somehow wasn't worthy of sitting on a team that wins gold medals effortlessly, but that story has now completely unraveled. The truth? This wasn't a basketball decision. It was a deliberate choice to hold back the sport's brightest star, fueled by fear, ego, farming, and a shocking level of mismanagement at the highest levels of the organization. When the news first leaked, it didn't come through a press release or celebratory announcement. It came from a single tweet by an insider, sending shockwaves through the sports world before USA Basketball could even try to control the narrative. Fans were stunned. How could the player who drew the highest rated women's basketball broadcast in history, even surpassing some NBA Finals viewership, be left off the team meant to showcase the sport on a global stage? Eventually, committee chair Jen Rosati had to answer the questions directly. She looked into the camera and insisted that basketball criteria were the priority and that marketing didn't matter. Clark was supposedly too young, couldn't handle the physicality, and needed to pay her dues behind veterans. On paper, it was framed as a basketball decision, but for anyone paying attention, it felt like a slap in the face. And the deeper we dug, the more the basketball excuses fell apart, revealing something far more troubling. Reports from respected journalists like Christine Brennan confirmed what insiders had long suspected. It wasn't about skill. USA Basketball was genuinely afraid of Clark. They feared her influence. They feared the reaction of her millions of fans, what some in the playout media call the Caitlin cult, who would erupt online if she was benched or denied the ball. Pause and let that sink in. A decision about who makes the team was guided not by winning, but by fear of social media backlash. Instead of embracing Clark's star power as a chance to grow the game, they treated it like a liability. They weren't interested in promotion or exposure. They wanted to silence the noise, protecting the egos of veterans who might feel overshadowed by a 2-year-old phenom. And this brings us to the stark hypocrisy of WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. She's been making the media rounds, smiling for cameras, and openly comparing Clark's arrival to the Magic Johnson, Larry Bird era that revitalized the NBA in the 1,980 seconds. She admits that rivalries, star power, and household names drive the business, but when the moment came to actually embrace the biggest star the sport has ever seen, USA Basketball turned her away. She proudly takes credit for the chartered flights, the revenue surges, and the massive Wnba Force media rights deals worth billions. Yet when it came time to put the league's biggest star on the most visible stage in the world, the Olympics, the leadership went completely quiet. Engelbert herself has acknowledged that Caitlin Clark is the league's economic engine, and yet she watched as the old guard shut Clark out of the tournament that mattered most. You can't claim to want to grow the game while hiding your top asset in a closet. That sends a confusing signal to sponsors and broadcast partners. We want your money, just not the player generating it. In any other industry, this kind of cognitive dissonance would get a CEO fired. The pushback against Clark isn't just coming from boardrooms, it's coming from inside the locker rooms too. From day one, the energy was clear. Even before Clark logged a single Constina WNBA minute, the hazing started in the media. We saw WNBA legend Diana Taurasi go on national TV during the Final Four, warning Clark that reality is coming, delivering the line more. like a threat than advice. That set the tone for a season where every hard foul and every physical play would be dissected under a microscope. Then there was Cheryl Swoops, another pioneer of the game, making blatantly false claims on a podcast suggesting Clark only broke college records because she played 5 years and took 40 shots a game, also false. Even when corrected, the apology was quiet, but the damage was done. There's a wait your turn culture in the league that often feels more like high school clique politics than professional competition. Some veterans resent a rookie getting what amounts to Michael Jordan-level treatment without years grinding overseas, even if her fame is the very reason millions are suddenly tuning in to watch them play. The league denies the jealousy narrative, but the evidence is everywhere in actions, in body language. Take the Kennedy Carter incident. When Carter hip-checked Clark to the floor away from the funds ball, the league initially called it a common foul. Only after the clip went viral, racking up tens of millions of views and sparking outrage across every major sports talk show, did the league upgrade it to a flagrant. That delay spoke volumes. It was as if the league hesitated to protect its golden goose, worried about upsetting veterans who felt Clark was getting special treatment. This reluctance to promote and defend Clark has created a bizarre dynamic where the WNBA seems almost at odds with its own fans. People tuning in to watch Clark are frequently met with commentary or attitudes suggesting they aren't real fans because they haven't been following the league for a decade. It's a gatekeeping mentality that defies basic business sense. You don't grow a business by insulting the customers who just walked in. Now, let's talk about the staggering financial misstep at the Olympics. Paris was a once-in-a-generation opportunity to propel women's basketball to the global stage. NBC had been counting on Clark, promotional materials were ready, ratings expectations were sky high. Instead, the USA team played before solid but far from sellout crowds. TV ratings for the gold medal game were good, but still paled in comparison to a random Tuesday night Indiana Fever versus Chicago Sky matchup. Millions of dollars in free exposure were essentially wasted because the league refused to ride the wave of Clark's popularity. NBC executives were reportedly furious. They paid a fortune for broadcasting rights, expecting the Taylor Swift of basketball to be front and center. What they got was a very good team, but without a star, the general public actually connected with emotionally. Arguments that Clark needed rest or wouldn't have played much were quickly dismantled by her performance. This season, since the Olympic break, she's arguably the best player in the league, breaking assists and scoring records while leading a team that finished last year straight into the playoffs. The idea that Caitlin Clark wasn't among the top 12 players in the country back in June now feels absurd. It exposes just how outdated the selection committee's thinking really is. They prioritize legacy over present impact. In the NBA, when a young phenom like Anthony Edwards or Tyrese Halliburton emerges, they are fast-tracked onto the Olympic roster to gain experience and carry the torch. In the WNBA, the door is slammed shut until you've paid your dues. That difference in philosophy is why the NBA dominates globally, while the WNBA struggled for profitability for nearly 3 decades until Clark arrived. The NBA understands a simple truth: stars sell the game. The WNBA, however, seems convinced that the system itself is enough. And then there's the uncomfortable conversation about race and culture. Some in the media and parts of the fan base have pushed the narrative that Clark's rise is because she's white, a claim that completely dismisses her generational talent and unprecedented shooting ability. This tension has seeped into the league's promotional efforts, or lack thereof. The WNBA has always celebrated black women as the backbone of the sport, so when a white superstar from Iowa suddenly dominates headlines, friction was almost inevitable. But instead of navigating this carefully and uniting fans, the league chose silence. That silence allowed a toxic Clark versus the WNBA narrative to fester online. Instead of positioning her as a player elevating the league alongside stars like Aja Wilson, media figures like Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee stoked the fire, but the league provided the fuel by refusing to address it head on. Then there's the team chemistry argument, the last defense the committee leaned on. They claimed that bringing in a player surrounded by so much media attention could distract from the passive goal of winning gold. But this is professional sports, not a summer camp. The 1,992 Dream team had massive egos and media circus, and they figured it out. Kobe and LeBron had to coexist, suggesting that women at the top of their game couldn't handle a rookie superstar on the bench is not just insulting, it's infantilizing. These athletes are the best in the world. Surely they could manage a few extra cameras and attention. In fact, many on that Olympic roster have shoe deals and sponsorships that would have grown simply by association with the spotlight Clark brings. A rising tide lifts all boats, but only if you open the gates. By keeping her out, the league kept the water level stagnant for state. Everyone, the repercussions of this decision will be felt for years. Already, we're seeing the impact. The WNBA's new media rights deal, valued at $2.2 billion over 11 years, owes much of its size to the Caitlin Clark effect. She is the leverage that brought the money. Yet the same players and first executives cashing those checks are the ones shading her in interviews or leaving her off the bays. Olympic roster. It's cognitive dissonance on a grand scale. They want the money she generates, but fear the disruption she brings to the established hierarchy. They want the charter flights and salary bumps, but can't admit that a rookie is the reason those things exist. That tension is palpable every time a veteran faces questions about Clark in post-game pressers. And what a missed opportunity it was. Imagine a lineup with the dominance of Aja Wilson and Brianna Stewart feeding Caitlin Clark for a logo 3 on the world stage in Paris. The highlights would have gone viral globally, introducing WNBA stars to millions in Europe, Asia, and South America who currently only know the NBA. It was a marketing slam dunk and they let it slip through their fingers. They played it safe, they stuck to the system, and in doing so, they confirmed what many already suspected: the WNBA is still wrestling with its own worst instincts. The league prioritized the comfort of a select few over the growth and expansion of the many. They acted more like a small business protecting a corner store than a global brand trying to dominate the market. As the season heads into the playoffs, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert's recent statements feel more like damage control than leadership. She's now acknowledging the superstar status of the rookies and condemning racism and toxicity among fans. But the truth is, it's too little, too late. The narrative has already been set. When the league had a chance to prove they were ready for the global stage, they blinked. They retreated. They let fear dictate their strategy. And ironically, they got the backlash. Anyway, not because Clark was spotlighted, but because she was ignored. The fans' anger wasn't about Clark being treated like a star. It was about her being treated like she didn't exist. The gatekeepers failed to understand a simple truth. The game doesn't belong to them, it belongs to the fans. And the fans spoke with their attention and their wallets. They tuned into the Indiana fever. They bought hundreds of jerseys. They traveled hundreds of miles just to watch her play. Excluding Caitlin Clark didn't damage her brand, it elevated it. It cast her as a martyr, an underdog challenging a rigged system which only made her more compelling. Every 20-point, 10-assist performance now serves as a living reminder of USA Basketball's mistake. Ironically, the real losers were the other talented Team USA players who missed out on the Providios as the biggest platform of their careers because their federation was too cautious to embrace the hype. Yes, they won the gold medal, but they lost the moment. The relationship between the commissioner, the USA Basketball Committee, and the fans is fractured. Trust has been broken. When they claim, "We want to grow the game," nobody believes it anymore. Fans see self-preservation, a refusal to adapt, and a fear of the unknown. Caitlin Clark embodies that unknown, an entirely new style of play, unmatched fame, and a beza fan base the league has never seen. Instead of rising to meet that challenge, they tried to suppress it, pretending business as usual was enough. But the numbers don't lie. Games without Clark return to typical WNBA viewership. Games with her compete with the NFL. That's not luck. It's the market sending a message loud and clear. In the end, this wasn't just a mistake, it was a statement of values. USA Basketball and the WNBA hierarchy decided that protecting the veteran hierarchy and keeping the old guard comfortable was more important than seizing the chance to grow the sport globally. They confirmed what critics have suspected all along. They would rather maintain control over a smaller pie than risk sharing it for something much bigger. The real question isn't whether Caitlin Clark will bounce back from the Olympic snub she already is. She's breaking records, dominating games, and elevating the sport to heights the league hasn't seen before. She has outgrown the very system that tried to hold her back. The real question is, will the league's leadership wake up and recognize that they need her far, more than she needs them? Or will they keep fumbling the biggest opportunity in the history of STUNS women's sports because they're too proud to admit that a two-year-old rookie from Iowa is running the show? For once, the pressure isn't on the players, it's on the people running the league. The world is watching, and their failure to adapt is glaring. It's time for them to stop getting in the way and finally give the fans what they want. Let's break down the criteria Jen Rosati and the selection committee used to justify leaving Clark off the team, because the more you examine it, the more insulting it becomes. They claimed her defensive experience was a major concern, yet history tells a different story. Look at the USA men's team. They regularly take players who may be defensive liabilities, but whose offensive skills are undeniable. They understand that talent and impact outweigh minor weaknesses. The reasoning for Clark? It doesn't hold up. It feels less like a legitimate basketball decision and more like an outdated attempt to protect tradition, hierarchy, and comfort at the expense of greatness.